Assalamu alaikum. I am Hamna Zubair from Pharmacy 6B. In today's lecture, we will talk about human respiratory system. These lectures include function of respiratory system, parts of respiratory system, which includes nose and nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, tertiary bronchi and bronchioles, and alveoli. Let's start off with function of respiratory system. Function of respiratory system is to transport the air into the lungs, to diffuse oxygen into the bloodstream and carbon dioxide out of the lungs. Mainly when we inhale oxygen that goes into our lungs and alveoli, and oxygen is being absorbed into our bloodstreams. And during that process, carbon dioxide diffuses out of the bloodstream into the alveolar sacs, and when we exhale, that carbon dioxide comes out of our nose and mouth. Our respiratory system is separated into upper and lower respiratory tract. The upper respiratory tract include nose, nasal cavity, mouth, pharynx, and larynx, and our lower respiratory tract include trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli. Nose and nasal cavity. Air enters the upper respiratory tract through nose and nasal cavity, where it is filtered, warmed, and moistened. These steps are important to prevent the contamination and irritation of our respiratory system. Next, air enters into the pharynx and then into the larynx. Behind the pharynx, there is esophagus, which is also called as our food pipe, and below pharynx, there is larynx, in which our vocal cords are present, and hence it is also called voice box. Trachea. After the larynx, air passes down into trachea, which is also called as windpipe. Inner membrane of trachea is covered in tiny hair cells called cilia, which catches dust particles and remove them through coughing. Along with cilia, trachea also contains mucus. It produces mucus, and all the dust particles and microbes that enter our respiratory system get stuck with that mucus, and these cilia help propel them out of our respiratory system and protect our respiratory system from their harmful effects. Trachea is surrounded by 15 to 20 C-shaped cartilages at the front and sides. This is because behind the trachea there is esophagus, and our food passes through our esophagus, right? So when the bolus is passing through it, it expands a little bit, and to allow the free motion of the food to pass through our food pipe, they are present in C form, and these cartilages help protect and keep the trachea open. Trachea is divided into two smaller tubules called bronchi. which passes air into the left and right lung. Once inside the lung, the bronchi split into several ways, forming tertiary bronchi. They continue to divide, forming bronchioles, which are narrow tubes less than 1 millimeter in diameter. So, as these tubes are dividing, they're also decreasing their diameter. So the bronchi is the thickest, and then secondary and tertiary bronchi. Then the bronchioles are very tiny, they're like 1 millimeter in diameter. Eventually, air enters alveolar sacs and alveoli, where gaseous exchange takes place. The walls of alveoli are very thin, and alveolar sacs are covered with a bed of capillaries. The fresh oxygen diffuses out of the alveoli into the capillaries, and carbon dioxide diffuses out of the capillaries into the alveoli. This gaseous exchange takes place because of the pressure difference. The partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high in our capillaries since they diffuse out of the capillaries into our alveoli, and the partial pressure of oxygen is high in our alveoli, so they diffuse out of our alveoli into the capillaries.